Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed. When we took the break, which ultimately turned into the lunch break, we were discussing the actual allocations or approvals for the 2016-17 financial year and those for 2018, trying to understand what was approved in 2016-17 and what was spent. And at the risk of making mistakes myself, I'm going to ask the financial secretary, who will explain the transactions that occurred in those years and provide the answers to the questions that were asked. Turn this over to the financial secretary.
Mr. Chair, before he does that, can the chair please permit me to make a correction? Before we took the break, I referred to the National Trust, and I actually meant to refer to the National Conservation Law, so the record could so reflect. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll speak firstly to the previous financial period. The 18-month period ended the 31st of December 2017. In terms of what was approved by Finance Committee to be dispersed from the Environmental Protection Fund for that 18-month period, it was $6 million was approved by Finance Committee to come from the Environmental Protection Fund. And I'm reading, Mr. Chairman, from the report of the Standing Finance Committee for that 18-month period, which would have been produced towards the end of the budget process, or at the end of the budget process. $6 million to acquire lands for conservation of the natural environment, and to carry out other programs aimed at protecting the environment. And that was that $6 million was a part of the appropriation EA for executive assets, EA 146, for an amount of $6 million. There was also a, a separate amount, $750,000 that was approved to come from the Environmental Protection Fund for protecting the environment, and that was a part of a larger appropriation. So of the $6 million which was approved to come from the fund in the 16-17 year, approximately 4.9 million of the 6 million was actually spent and would have been dispersed from the fund. So although it was a possibility of 6 million coming from the fund, only $4.8 million had actually been dispersed and used up. Those parcels of land, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee, that were bought for $4.9 million are all now owned by the Crown. So I've been given information over the break for about 9 parcels of land totaling the 4.9 million CI that I was talking about, mentioned earlier, all now owned directly by the Crown itself. Mr. Chairman, of the other element, the $750,000, which was to do with again protecting and preserving the environment. Of that 750, approximately 258,000 has actually been utilized, and not the full 750. There was also, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. There was also a further 1.245 million that had been approved by the committee to come from the fund. And though that amount, Mr. Chairman, was in respect of processing waste tires at the Georgetown landfill, $1,245,000. And I've been advised, Mr. Chairman, that entire amount has actually been spent. So all of those details, $1,245,000. Mr. Chairman, that was in respect of the 16-17 period. in respect of the 2018 financial year, we have a total of $6.1 million which has been approved to come from the Environmental Protection Fund. So that's the current financial year that we're in. $4.6 million relates to remediation of the Georgetown landfill to come from the Environmental Protection Fund. None of that, Mr. Chairman, thus far in the 18 financial year, none of that $4.6 million has actually been spent. The remaining $1.5 million of the $6.1 million, Mr. Chairman, the vast majority of that relates to, 1.1 million of it relates to culling the iguanas program. Another 165,000 to do with turtle-friendly lighting, 50,000 with a stingray study, 50,000 with coral reef restoration, 50,000 with the Sister Island rock iguana traffic calming project, and 35,000 to do with the Cayman parrot amnesty program. Those amounts total approximately the 1.5 million. The single largest component of that, the 1.1 relating to the culling of the iguana program, none of that has been spent to date. So for the 2018 financial year, we have a total of 6.1 million, which has already been approved by the Finance Committee earlier in this calendar year to possibly occur. Very little of that 6.1 has been spent to date. So the numbers may be a bit similar and therefore can easily be confused, but they're different. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member from East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in light of what was just reported, can your good self, sir, your ministry, tell us the net remaining amount in that fund, despite what you said, as of now, May, I think you said it was, versus the potential net at the end of this year, not considering what we're dealing with today. Leaving out what we're potentially doing today, the 10 million. We need to know what it is today versus what the potential is at the end of this year.
In answer to your question, sir, the balance at the 1st of January is $55,991,000. Estimate is that interest of 1.07 million will be earned on those funds during the year, which will be taken into general revenue. Okay, there is an estimate of 5.918 million to be transferred into the EPF from the normal sources from whence it comes. And given what has been approved for the 2018 financial year of 6.1 million to come out, that leaves us, as of today, prior to this approval that we are seeking, $55,809,000. Yes, that would be at the end of December 2018 when you take in the interest and what should come into the fund. But I think it's fair to say we don't at this point have any information regarding what's actually been transferred into the fund to date, year to date. Don't know if we have access to that information.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm just interested in the plus and the minus from that fund and to that fund 31st of December based on what we currently, the approvals we currently have to remove therefrom. That's all I'm interested in right now, because potentially there's another $20 million to be removed.
Don't think so.
He's adding the 2 years. He's adding
10 million. Because there's 10 that is not being used in this year. There's a potential $20 million to be removed from that fund.
You want to see if you can answer it?
As of, if this 10 is approved today, then there's $20 million on top of what it should or would have been based on the approvals and the addition of $6 million.
Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best to assist the committee. Perhaps just jumping ahead a little bit, towards the back of honorable members' Finance Committee agenda items, there's a resolution to obviously take money from the Environmental Protection Fund. That is on page 9 of the bundle of papers with the committee members. It actually indicates in that resolution that will be sought from the committee that at the end of May, the 31st of May 2018, the balance in the Environmental Protection Fund was approximately $58.5 million CI. We planned, as members have been told, we planned to take a further $6.1 million in the course of 18 to pay for the $4.6 million of remediation of the Georgetown landfill. We plan to take $1.5 million for the various programs I just outlined, most of which will relate to iguana culling program. So we plan to take $6.1 million possibly from the fund during 18. The point that the chairman was making earlier was when we added in the interest that we expect to get on the fund during the course of the year, of $1 million approximately. When we add in the $5.9 million of funds into the Environmental Protection Fund of $5.9 million, and we transfer out the interest to general revenue of $1 million, what we expected prior to today and prior to this request was that at the end of December 2018, the balance in the EPF would be approximately $55.9 million at the end of December 2018. If 6.1 was taken out, if the interest earned was $1 million, if the transfers in to the fund was 5.9 and we took out 6.1, we would end up at around 55.8 million, 31st of December 2018. If we take out a further 10 million, if the committee approves that further 10 million today, December 18 would become 45.9 million. That would obviously then carry forward onto the 1st of January 2019 position, and there more interest to be earned in 19, more funds, etc. The same process would occur in 19. In the course of 2019, the committee has already approved possibly $9.55 million to come out of the EPF during the financial year 2019. So if there were no further requests during 2019, if there were no further requests, we would expect the Environmental Protection Fund at the end of December 19 to be approximately $42.2 million. Mainly as a result of a conversation, Mr. Chairman, during the break, I can confirm what the honorable member for East End's thinking is. It is correct that 6.1 million possibly coming out in 18 from the Environmental Protection Fund, 9.55 million coming out in 2019 is approximately 16 million was his rounding, and that's fair. And then a further 10 million today would mean a total of 26 million leaving the fund between 2018 and 2019, assuming the 10 million was approved today, sir.
Meaning that the net increase would only be 2 million over the next two years. About 3 million or thereabouts, and round it up 3 million. So we would be anywhere between 40 and 42 million, as opposed to it being 55 million right now.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Member for Northside.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether the information is available now, but if it is not, I would welcome an undertaking to provide it. I wonder if we could hear what parcels of land and which district they're allocated in that was bought on behalf of the National Conservation Council, because it doesn't impress me that it's owned by the Crown. That's just until they get hold of it to transfer it to the National Trust.
Minister, are you able to provide the information?
Mr. Chairman, out of the abundance of caution, I would ask the members' permission to give it to him in writing so he'd have a complete and permanent record of this situation. You'll be getting it from Mr. David Fawcett from the Ministry.
Member from East End.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can the Minister in some way give us some undertaking that of how we're going to deal with these properties bought for those specific purposes? I got my shopping list too, but, and I say that in the interest of whether they're going to be put under the National Conservation Committee, because if it is, then nothing can be done on those properties. And those properties should be utilized for the enjoyment of the people of this country. And in particular, the restrictions that were placed on those 9, I think, that she will provide in writing for the member from Northside. We need to ensure that whatever we purchase is going to be used for the enjoyment, regardless of how that is, without any permanent and ominous restrictions placed upon them. And what undertaking we can be assured that that will happen.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it is my understanding, and certainly my conviction, and I can inform this Honourable House that the properties that are proposed to be bought, those have received and those that are still waiting to be received from Honourable members of the House, will be in possession of Crown property. It can only have the covenants put on them if the National Conservation Group sends it to Cabinet and Cabinet agrees for it. And I can certainly say that as far as I know, every member in this Cabinet, based on many, many factors, intrinsic and extrinsic, wishes for these properties to be solely in the Crown's ownership for the free utilization of the public.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Member for Northside.
I wonder if the Minister of the Environment would be prepared to give the House some kind of assurance that all the other provisions that exist in the National Conservation Land Law that can be used to protect land are utilized prior to purchase of the land. Because what we are doing is we are removing the wealth from families in Cayman to protect lizards and snails and snakes. Because there are, I don't know if members recall, but there are specific provisions in the National Conservation Law which allow for management agreements of environment areas that need to be protected prior to and without the need of ownership. The problem we have is that the National Trust and the National Conservation Council believe that protection can only be provided if government owns it. And we've been protecting land in my constituency all our life. And what they're telling people is erroneous. They're outliers. Well, I can't use that word, but they're being mendacious with the truth. Because when you go up in Mastic and you put all this publicity about its virgin forest, these people don't come since 1972. Because all of the houses in Northside were built from mahogany and ironwood harvest in from that forest. All the schooners that Uncle Bill Banks built were built from wood harvested in that forest. And what we have in my constituency now is we have 40% or greater of all of the arable land being in the hands of the National Trust. And you can't get a crab, you can't get a mango, you can't hunt a rabbit, you can't cut a top, because it's a $500,000 fine if you remove anything from that land. And as representatives of the people, we have to realize that we have to hold land where it's available for future generations to live off of, and not just put it in these national trusts and make it inalienable because we got some. Let me stop there.
Mr. Chair, I agree. We need to buy land for and not take land from. And do undertake to review this matter, and I asked the member if he has any other specific concerns, if you could please send them to me in writing. But
The other you members will recall when this was done for the 2016, we tried desperately to find out what land was going to be bought. And the minister and the Department of the Environment absolutely refused to tell us where the areas of landfall. And we knew that the Department of the Environment had already put overlays over people's land and prevented the people from developing the land, which was all denied in here, you know.
In the fullness of time, we will get that list.
And I also got a master some overlays on them too, you know. And they get up to their land and it goes completely around the boundary, not a thing on their land to protect. But the man next door can give up half his. Mr. Chairman, I better get off my soapbox because this is
Vexen. Mr.
You have a
Chairman.
question, member from East End?
Yes, yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we have,
just stop taking advice from people who.
I think this fund provision went in place 87, somewhere in that area. 87, 97. I'm off by 10 years. That's not bad. Mr. Chairman, in my tenure here, we have removed monies from there a couple of times, maybe about 5-6 times, as I recall, maybe less, about 3 times what it was like, different amounts in those times for different things. What I am finding is that, one, people do not know exactly how much they're going to spend. They don't do proper research, and we just give them carte blanche on a particular amount to do as they please. I have never been receptive to that. I am not excited about that, never was, because I believe we should all know what it is that we're going to go at. However, one of the greatest dangers to the environment in this country happens to be the green iguana. We have $1.1 million just sitting there. I want to know, what is the difficulty in killing iguana and chopping the head off and burning them up? That's number one. I need to know that. You mean we have such incompetence that we can't organize a killing spree on iguanas? We like to call it culling, the scientific word. You mean to tell me it has taken us 6 months and we still don't know how to kill iguanas and burn them up in that air curtain incinerator down at the dump? Do we need to come out of our houses to show them how to use the air guns and to pay $5, $3 or whatever we're going to pay? What is happening? The member from Prospect and I was outside a minute ago, not telling you what we were doing, but we were outside and there was this iguana about 6 feet walking across the parking lot. You mean tell me we can't get them? If they need us to show them, I am very capable. There's no such thing as cruelty to that which will destroy you. And it's destroying us. Mr. Chairman, I frequent the East End land quite often on a weekly basis. And I see a lot of blues. But I ain't going to tell them where they are because they're going to take them from there now and bring them Georgetown too.
Minister,
Mr. Chair.
provide your answer, then we're going to get back to the subject matter
Thank
at
the
hand.
member. Thank you for the question, member for East End. I beg your indulgence to allow the chief officer, Mr. Aaron, to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the Department of Environment and the National Conservation Council have been putting together a business case, which is required under the new procurement law and regulations in order to move forward with the proposed program. One of the challenges that they're facing is regarding their initial plan and having to adjust it according to the funds that have been allocated. The ministry had the first draft of the business case a couple of weeks ago. We had some questions and we're expecting to get it back from the Department of Environment in the coming weeks.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to know what adjustments has to be made based on the money you have. Mr. Minister, I don't know what that adjustment can be. If you're going to pay $5 to kill, not cull, kill iguanas per head, like we used to do with rabbits, then if you were planning for $3 million, you're only getting half that amount, you know. That's all the only plan. I see change. I would like to know what plans there are because these things are becoming a bother in this country now when everybody's sitting down except those of us who have air guns.
Mr. Chair, I can tell you that caucus is fully supportive of this initiative and really want to get it going and expeditiously. We're waiting patiently on the department. And I can tell you that if any amount of funds have been exhausted, once a program is successful, Cabinet and caucus is very supportive of trying to find those funds wherever we need to find them from to continue a successful program.
Mr. Chairman, I give the member my commitment to that too, but you know, you ain't gonna find me hugging up in a tree. I'm no conservationist by any stretch of the imagination, but I also understand that extinction is forever. And we guys won't be extinct with iguanas eating us. It needs to stop, and we need to deal with it. It's ridiculous to think that these things are destroying people's crops, their gardens, everything, and we approve monies on more than one occasion, and we cannot kill a simple iguana that can't even run from you. and we can't plan that. You could tell me we are that incompetent in this country that we can't plan killing a few iguanas and chopping their heads off?
Member from the outside.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, can the minister confirm that under the new culling arrangements that are being proposed by DOE, you will have to have a business license and a gun license in order to kill iguana and clean the money?
Mr. Chair, I don't know the actual answer because I haven't been provided any information from DOE as yet. But I can say personally, I hope that that's not the case.
Mr. Chairman,
Member for Newlands.
just to the minister, in going through this revamping of the culling program, are we involving research and support that's been offered by local individuals who have spent some time actually studying the iguana in terms of their habitat, their breeding patterns, and so on? Because I was speaking to one such gentleman, Mr. Ralph Manusing. He actually provided me with a complete plan that he said he'd been trying to share with DOE. And at the time, he said he was getting nowhere with that. One interesting fact that he told me, which I found helpful, is that iguanas lay eggs during the hottest month of the summer, the month of the year, which is now. If we don't start culling now, before they lay those eggs, whatever program you implement after that is ineffective. It won't even make a dent. You're just wasting more money. So I would suggest looking at local experts like him who have actually taken the time to do the research and involve them in the program.
You only got to look at the roadkill, at the iguanas, those yellow things you see, that's the eggs. They're digging holes right now to lay eggs. Of course, that's why DOE is holding things up. They want us to always be culling iguanas, you know. They don't want to reduce the population, right? They want to make sure the eggs are laid first, so that for every one we kill, 6 are born.
Mr. Chair, member from Newlands. Is quite correct. We should be utilizing, and I'm being hopeful. I'm not sure, and I can check that DOE should be reaching out to some of our local experts who have been around doing culling and studying the iguana, the green iguana, for some time. I would have hoped. I mean, that's the only way this is going to work, if we have a collaborative approach in trying to kill these iguanas. But I will definitely undertake to speak to DOE again. And in fact, I undertake to have an answer sent to every member of this House within 2 weeks. And within 2 weeks being July 18th. And there's really no answer that I could give you all that would be satisfactory to me as to why this program hasn't started as yet.
If there are
careful,
no further questions,
Be
I
careful,
put
Mr.
this
Minister.
matter to the vote.
The last time DOE was here
Oh,
with
no.
you told me consider it done because of some buoys for no dive zone. Nothing has been done over a year later.
Off the matter.
What you want to put vote on, sir?
The vote for the land.
No. We only just get the information from him where this money is.
Please get, if you
Okay,
have
sir.
questions, let's take them and
Okay.
let's confine the discussion and the questions
All
to
right.
the particular vote at hand. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what you would like us to do, but you understand, once a subject has been broached in here, it opens the door. And your gentleman there did that.
And the
And then
chair,
it-
I think the chair can try to close it too.
Well, I guess since you got your majorities over there, you can do anything you please. That's how it works.
Please proceed, member from East End.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to know and get an explanation as to what kinds of land, i.e., forget about the beach and the protection of the environment, what is the full criteria that government sees they're going to use to justify the purchases?
Minister?
Criteria: insufficient lack of public beaches for the benefit and use of the current Caymanian generation and generations to come. Prerequisites: all members in this parliament, which fully represents the 19 constituency within this jurisdiction, has been given equal access and opportunity to submit parcels that they think that would be relevant for the public's use within their constituency to the minister who's speaking. And once it comes within the $10 million, and to date it's about 8 approximately, it will be done. I don't believe there's another minister in this house who wants to buy more land than the current minister. And as they know, the record is that I approach each member with respect, because I believe they know their constituents are best. So if you have not yet submitted it, please submit it, because I'm anxious to see sufficient beach property in all the land. Why have I emphasized beach property? Because the member himself has been very good in bringing to the attention of this honorable house that there is just under $20 million that have been put in the 18-month budget, the 2018, and if you add the 9 for next year for purely environmental matters under this resolution, then I don't think that anybody with a fair mind would be saying that we're out of step trying to make a historic movement to give something back to the Caymanians, where once and for all, it cannot be said that we're development on the back of Caymanians, but in fact, we are actually prepared to deliver to the Caymanians.
Member from East End?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know 8 million already expended. That means it leaves us with very little, because we were only notified Friday of the opportunity to do this. Friday, the Premier came to me. I don't want to get into that.
Me either, sir, but it suffices to say that notice 4 days late is better than no notice at all. And I can tell you of many instances and many governments who have not afforded you such an opportunity. That cannot be said of this minister.
All I am saying is that whilst it is being said by the minister that due regard was paid to all members, as far as I'm concerned, it was Friday when we closed down here that I was told. So I had to plan to work over the weekend. So I'm going to make my proposals right now. I see there are sufficient technical staff who can write all this down or extract it from the handsets. And I'm going to justify mine so that the public knows what I am doing. That's all I am. That's merely what I'm trying to do here. Mr. Chairman, I think
Mr. Chairman,
that's
I beg your indulgence. The member obviously has the power, the desire, and or the discretion to do as he's proposing to do, but I would ask him that him or another member attempt to play politics with this very important allocation. And let me explain what I mean by that, Mr. Speaker. All of us can actually take the microphone and say which parcels that we are purporting or requesting the government to buy. There is an inherent risk, which is not just a hypothetical risk, but we've seen it before under the National Roads Authority when we sought to acquire land for roads. Once the general public understands what parcels are being proposed, we have those unscrupulous developers within our midst who will purchase those properties, our land values will go up, and instead of us being able to get in every district, we'll find out that we'll get much less property. That is the concern that I have, and I say it for what it's worth.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see how a fair market value can be changed by somebody purchasing the property. Because if they purchase it, it is fair market value, as I understand it, is based on previous sales a combination of that and its intrinsic value to the buyer and the seller. So I really don't understand that. I think that it's fair that people know the types of the types of things that we will use these funds for, because I see we only bought 9 pieces out of $5 million in the previous financial year.
I think, member, you can achieve your objective by just simply giving the minister the list.
I'm playing politics, okay?
Okay.
But if we want to play politics,
No, I don't want to either.
but Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. The minister has now said that she is proposing we don't play politics. Politics, really? Is that what we're talking about? Because we're in the house of politics, and it's always played in here, without any disrespect to anyone. Mr. Chairman, I believe that it's in the best interest of this country to make the people know what is being proposed to be, their money is being proposed to be spent on.
Minister?
Mr. Chairman, just out of the abundance of caution, this is not a covert exercise that we're about to embark upon. Each member, as I said, know their constituency better than the collective body. Because of a decision that was made in Cabinet within the past week or so, we decided that we were going to come to the House today, which we are now doing, to purchase land. This wasn't something that government had as a red carrot or plan a long time ago. We just came out of very intense parliamentary sit-ins. As soon as we had an opportunity, I shared it with my colleagues across the floor. I left it open-ended. I could have come today with a complete list of what we received to date. Because some members indicated that they would go back to their constituency over the weekend, as the honorable member of the opposition did, and provided his this morning, I still left it open-ended and indicated to Finance this morning that as opposed to putting forward a complete list at the risk of leaving members out or at the risk of members not having an opportunity, we would seek for the $10 million and members could make the representation to the ministry. We would then proceed as we would normally do, where we get the 3 valuations, some lands, as members would understand. As the request came in, we got a ballpark figure from the lands for the respective parcels that have come in to date. I still have the concern. I have no objection if the member wants to do that so that the people in Easton and the people in Cayman Islands know that it was Viard and McLean, a member from Easton, who got this piece of property. I don't have any problem with that. All I'm saying is that in doing that, make sure that on a balance of probabilities, that the people who we say we represent get the best buck for the money. And if he wants to do it now, he can do it now. All I'm saying, I'm certainly not submitting it. And the members from this side and thus far from the opposition, I took time this morning to speak to members, Mr. Chairman, to indicate the concern that I had. So if the member wants to do that, who am I to stop him? Let him proceed.
Mr. Chairman, how am I going to justify my submissions to the government? We don't meet with them. As far as I know, the only time the minister said anything to us was this morning. The minister spoke to me. The premier spoke to me on Friday evening. The premier did. So I don't know what is going on. I don't know how to approach this. I don't know how to justify my submissions in what I believe.
Member, I'm going to ask you, please then proceed to do what you intended to do, and that would be to lay out before the committee now what your recommendations are.
Mr. Chairman, I do not wish to deprive my people of anything, whether they're in West Bay, Cayman, Brack, or East End, and they don't get value for money. That's what the minister is saying, that is her fear, that me doing this will deprive them of value for money. In essence, that's what she's saying. But there has not been anything from this government to say exactly how they we or any member can put forward any proposal and justify it to the government. What am I to expect, that they come back and say that there's none? How do I defend it?
Members, is there a question there, or are you expecting something back from the chair or the minister?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess you're the one who will disperse it, or whether it's one of the two ministers. How do I justify to the government, defend my position on proposals to purchase these different pieces of land in the interest of the people of East End and for the enjoyment of them and the entire country? How do I do it? This is politics. Do I wait and see how them they pick out? I don't know. Or that can be purchased out of the 10 million, because in 1 week, the minister said it was carried to cabinet 1 week ago, and the approval was given. Lands and Survey did a lot of light. They must have tied light round their head at night to get all them evaluations done. To get to $8 million potentially gone already.
Do you have anything to add, Minister?
Mr. Chairman, if the member from Easton wishes to follow suit of the other 18 members in Parliament, he can submit it orally or in writing to myself. He can read it out in the open for all and sundry to hear. He can prioritize it if he has more than one request, from 1 through X, depending on what he, as the representative for Easton, deems as most important for the beneficial interests of the majority of people in Easton and the wider Caymanian populace. And we will be taking it to Lands and Survey. They will do 3 evaluations as is required, providing the proprietors wishes to sell. And if they do not wish to sell, we would have to seek the members from their respective constituents whether they wish the government to go compulsory acquisition, as that is not the first preference, and we will purchase the properties accordingly as equitable as possible, ensuring that the main goal is that there is at least one piece of beach property in every constituency in the country as far as practical. We've discussed and realized that districts such as MLA Suku and Newlands would have more swamp area, for example. Sorry? And Bordentown West, but they can still have waterfront. For example, in West Bay, the infamous Bogisan, there is non-billable or occupiable right-of-way that is included from the members from West Bay. Persons know the history, especially those of us who have sat on the planning board. We would wish to get a piece like that. And I would not wish to discuss that any further, but to give an idea of some of the risk that's in there. Not many Caymanians can purchase beach property as individuals. Hence, we are making a valiant attempt today to try to purchase beach properties in all 3 Cayman Islands for the benefit of all our people in years to come. Never comprehended that that would be such a difficult exercise.
No, Mr. Chairman, I have never objected to the principles under which we operate here. I've always had concerns about the methods. So, can the minister tell me then if certain amounts would be allocated by district or by constituencies?
Minister?
Mr. Chairman, is the member's submission in excess of $10 million?
I wish. What will happen then?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to get some clarity.
I need an answer, please, Mr. Chair, if I could, if the minister knows it's not in excess of 10 million, but if she could tell me if there is a particular allocation per constituency or by district.
Minister?
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest degree of respect, the member in my humble submission is being facetious. Let me tell you why, Mr. Chairman. Land purchases vary significantly. A piece of beach property in West Bay compared to a piece of beach property in Cayman has no comparison. So it's difficult to say, well, each constituency will get the same amount of funds. Because we have the 10 million, because of the submissions to date, does not come up to the 10 million. And it's, I would say, over 90%, probably 95% of requests have been submitted, except from the member from Easton, who still has it in his hands. I am happy, I'm anxious to get this vote so I can go and get my team to purchase this land, these land acquisitions. Now, unlike the District of Easton that already have 5 beach properties and the Lowers Wall, which covers and preserves through the wisdom of the member from Easton, hundreds of feet of property, there are 18 other constituencies that don't have it.
Mr. Chairman, Lovers Wall is private loan, the land behind it. That's all private loan. Nobody can go on that. She says that I have it in my hand. I don't want to get into a real argument with the minister. She says I still have it in my hand. She doesn't know how much work I had to do over the weekend, despite having other things to do, to try and come up with this and find the block and parcel and the legs. Because the only reason I still have it is because the others were notified long before us. That needs to be said too. They knew about this long before me. I only knew about it from Friday evening. Come with no foolishness around me, man.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, I would be most grateful if members indicate whether or not they wish to proceed from the other side, because if not, there's $10 million that is available, and the public ought to understand that we're willing and prepared, and I do believe from speaking to the members on the other side that they are in favor of it. These hypothetical arguments, Mr. Speaker, will take it no further. And at the end of the day, when we row with National Trust and the National Conservation thing, one thing they do, they agree and they move forward.
I think, the member from Newlands.
Only when it comes to other people's land, they don't know nothing about their own. They sold all this down here, Georgetown and West Bay. Now they won't come north side and thief it from people. They got their millions of dollars.
Member from
Mr.
Newlands.
Chairman, first let me start by saying that I like the member from East End, I completely support this this idea. We want to preserve natural resources for our people. My concern, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but it's difficult for us on this side to go about making recommendations because we don't know exactly what we're working with. We know that there's 10 million in funding that the government is trying to get approval for. We're hearing that about 8 million of that, if I'm correct, has already been earmarked. Clearly, there would have had to been some process that they went through where you would have gotten valuations and so on. So the government was now prepared to come and get the funds to do it. Perfect. However, we on Friday were made aware of it and asked to make submissions. I need to know what I'm working with because there are a number of properties that I would look at in my constituency, but I want to be equitable with the other members of the opposition. I don't want to be throwing out recommendations that are going to eat up the entire 2 million that's left. So if we could have some sort of an idea of generally where these other parcels are, so that at least we can sit together and say, okay, well, we need to look at this place or that place, but also some sort of guaranteed minimum, to say, well, make sure, even if it's one submission, but at least you're guaranteed for your constituency, this is what we're going to have in the pot for you. Because it's difficult for us to make these assessments in isolation without the information.
Mr. Chairman, I am reliably informed by my good friend to my right that he discussed the ones that he had requested for bond down with the honorable member across the aisle. But we didn't limit it at that. He can make his in there. And, you know, I'm not in opposition, but had I been in opposition today, what I would have utilized my energy for? Bring in a motion asking the government if they could increase it to facilitate extra ones that they found. I mean, we got the one from the honorable leader of the opposition. Immediately as I got that from the good gentleman, I asked my staff to do an estimate for it. They did it, and we included it in. The members there, did I give you an objection and say, no, I didn't want to do it? No, I'm going to try to find money now to help them develop it so that people in Northside can get the benefit of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Member for-
just to clarify, there was no discussion with the member to your right, other than he opened up his phone, showed me a picture of a parcel of land. But there wasn't any in-depth discussion of which pieces, where, cost, and all that. This was in the dining room. So, turn on your mic and call me a liar. You can't get it on. There's a reason why you can't get it on.
Member from Bundown West.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
I emailed the member from Newlands the parcel of land. He sent it over by the Sarge's email address. And I asked him if he got it, and he's saying he got it. So nothing was hid from any of the members, and I ensured that the members from Bordentown all understood what was going on.
He didn't get it.
So the email trail is there. And if the member is saying that he didn't get the email, so he understood the scope of what we were trying to achieve. I even sent my phone over with the parcel of land and how it was acquired. He has everything.
Mr. Chair, I'm not even going to bother to respond to that, Mr. Chairman. I just want to impress upon the government that for us, pardon? Yes, you showed me your phone while I was having lunch, but that doesn't mean anything. That's not
Members,
a discussion.
please.
Did you just call me a liar, sir?
We are,
Mr. Chairman, you want me to move a motion, whatever I need to move?
no, we don't want to get to that point. Member from
No, I'm
Newlands,
not
I
going to sit here
understand.
and be insulted like that.
But
I haven't seen the email. I was off the island all weekend. I haven't even opened it.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, you know what? Let me calm down.
member for Bordentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a beach in my district, and I would very much like to have a beach in my constituent. And I understand that funds may be limited. So the next question I'm going to ask is the government, would the government be willing to increase the allotment so at least we can go and purchase something? Because I would like to get something in my constituency. For my, seeing as the second largest constituent and pretty much no beach, I would like to have a beach for my constituent. So I want to know if the government is open to the idea of increasing allocation. I'm coming outside.
On a separate matter.
Member, I think the short answer is that we have a fixed sum that we're asking for approval, and that has to spread amongst the 19 different constituencies. I'm personally not in favor of seeing the actual amount, the limit increased at this point in time, going beyond the 10 million, that is.
We
So,
can't increase it from this side.
We can't increase
no, but the question.
knows that too. We can't increase it. They can move the motion. We can suggest they move the motion.
Well, that's the reason I asked the question, if the government would be interested, because if
Deputy
it's 10
Premier.
million and 8 million has been earmarked, it doesn't really leave much. So that's the reason why the question, if the government would be willing to
Mr.
consider
Chairman.
increasing it.
Coming back.
Chairman, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the minister responsible has brought this here today. In the conversations with each one of the opposition members, it was made very clear that the input that was wanted was the constitutional right that that member had because you're the elected member for your constituency. And that information has been passed on by some but not all. I think the fact that the government has brought this today shows that the intent of this government is to get property that can be used for the greater good of the Caymanian people, which has been very well explained by the minister who's brought this. The specific question of if your constituency does not get what you see that you want, I think it has been shown today that we still have some time left, and the purpose of looking into acquiring land in this way is to spread it throughout the country and do the best we can as a united government for this initiative. So I would say to you, for your specific question, that the finance minister has said he's not comfortable with going over $10 million at this point, but there's still money left in that $10 million to be allocated. If there's still more needed, let us look at how we work on that in the future. This is a good way forward. This is a good project for us all to work on. Let's not lose the momentum that we have here in getting this done today, please.
But Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to the Deputy Premier, the government has the majority. They can vote it. You said that a while ago to me off mic. They can put the question, but they must not come here and try to make the people believe that we were part and parcel of this thing long before we were not. Mr. Chairman, we only knew of this Friday evening.
Half an hour.
And we have had to do, no, for the benefit of that Deputy Premier and all ministers. I want them to know the same way I can speak of it and elucidate on it, I can write it. I am going to document it so that the public and the people of East End knows, because I have no knowledge. I am not just going to they have not even given us any criteria other than beach and submit something. Submit something? We didn't even have the benefit of being able to evaluate it and get costing on it. That is not available to us. And we're asking questions now as to how much possible it for each district, and we have been vilified. Come on.
I think the point is, Mr. Member from North Side, then I come to you back, Member from Savannah.
I'm still waiting on a comment to leave it drawing. It was on the mic. I'm still waiting. Nobody's going to call me a liar and get away with it. But is it true?
He called you a liar still?
Draw the comment, or I can take it further.
Member from North Side.
Yeah, to you, Mr. Chairman, to the minister. A couple of times in making the presentation, the minister talked about beach access. As I recall, there are two types of beach access that are registered or not registered, but are identifiable by the government. One is those beach accesses to which a prescriptive right has been earned over the years, and they are therefore inalienable. There are also those access to the beach that is required in accordance with the development and planning law, which is 6 foot access to the beach, depending if the development covers more than, I think it's 200 feet of beach. I just want the minister's assurance that none of this money will have to be used to purchase either of those beach accesses, because we know that several of the developers have abused the privilege, and even today, with the public lands law coming into effect, I think it was in January this year, we still have some of those prescriptive right-of-ways, because once the planning regulation has been used for more than 20 years, it becomes a prescriptive right along the 7 Mile beach and in other districts that still the developers are blocking it, although we have the legislation now to enforce it and find them and make sure that they're cleared.
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I can categorically say that none of these funds, if approved today, are intended for use to purchase prescriptive right-of-ways or right-of-ways that are granted under our development and planning law. I can also say that the Public Lands Authority is up and going. The membership have been appointed. They're almost completed with the regulations, which will give them an extra teeth for enforcement. But in the meanwhile, they're continuing to work with the committee. Her name escapes me now. Ms. Esme and Alice Mako and those who are working with it. And I know that Mr. Bill Adams had been looking at some affidavits that were deemed insufficient to bring it up to the requisite litmus test that's there. So work continues on that because the ministry and the government deem the preservation of these right-of-ways as very important to the Caymanian people, and many of us have personal experience having to walk along the beach and receive and being a recipient of some very derogatory words from the private owners, and we want to ensure through actions like today that our Caymanians will not have to endure that, or if it do, it will certainly be very, very negligible.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there also is, and I will accept that this is a little bit off the beaten track here now, but there also is a recognized right in the difference of what's under the planning regulation for building purposes, i.e. the high water mark, versus what is public beach under the prescriptive law. And in my constituency, and I'm sure in other constituencies, many of the landowners now believe, and unfortunately, some of the planning board, in my view, has erred in allowing structures to be built on the prescriptive public land. And we're having difficulty with the people who purchase land to understand the difference between a high water mark, which in my constituency may be 6 inches above a water line because of the specific terrain, and the ability to people to walk on the public beach. So I would ask the minister if she could ask the board of the public lands law to spend some time educating the public about those two different rights.
Commitment undertaken, but I think also perhaps we need to take it a bit further, because that confusion came about, as a member knows, some years ago, and I think it needs to be revisited to make sure that it's still a relevant and prudent consideration for today, because quickly and fastly, most rapidly, the Caymanians are losing the right to traverse the Crown's property, which we've known as beach land around Cayman Islands.
Member for Savannah?
Thanks for turning your head to the left, Mr.
It's always been that way, sir.
It rarely gets over here. Hope it doesn't get stiff. This has been a classic case of failure to communicate. We sat here now over the last hour and a half, going over and over. Just my version, what I've seen, what I experienced. And on Friday, the Premier indicated to me the possibility of this coming, no details. On the weekend, my colleague to the left here called me, and one of the things he and I discussed, he probably didn't know or understand, I didn't, about the purchase. And the first thing came to our head, we need a new high school in our district. So this is what we were thinking about. When Madam Juliana came in, Minister, this morning, she said to me, and then said that Ezra would probably share with me. So, but I have not gotten into any details of what's going on. What I would really like to have seen, especially in Borden Town, where, as has been indicated, there's such very limitation of beach access, literally from central Borden Town and up. 20 years ago, I bought the piece of land behind Spot Cemetery when I was in the government there. That's the only little wedge there. But if the four of us for Bordentown could communicate and look at how best we can benefit the overall number of people with the best access. But my real answer and question to the minister is, can I get some time to try and identify a parcel of land in, I don't know where it would be in that area, because once you cross spots, you aren't sure till you get up to Beach Bay and End Bay. So if we can continue to communicate, but folks would really gotta get past this kind of thing, just going endlessly over one subject when it's benefiting so many of our people in Cayman. Thank you.
I'm going to take and put the matter to the vote at this time.
Mr. Chair, before you do, may I just have a moment to thank the member from Savannah for his submission and from his sage methodology of participating in this democratic process. I can say we have until the 31st of 2018 to expend the funds should it receive positive approval today. So certainly you have time to make your submission, sir. Thanks, Mr.
Chairman, just one thing before you go. The question, I mean, I understand your position, but going back to my original question, would the government consider increasing the amount? Because clearly we realize this is something that needs to be done. And the last thing we want is to be coming back again to have this exercise. So either if it's carried an extra 2-3 million or something, would the government be willing to consider that?
I think, as I indicated previously to your member, I feel uncomfortable with making that recommendation. I think what we need to do is to let's wait and see where the budget continues to trend to know whether we're going to have the sufficient funds that are needed, and let's complete this process for 2018 and revisit in 2019, because I know that there's clearly a desire within the government to acquire these properties for the benefit of Caymanians for the future. So that's my recommendation to my colleagues, that I think 10 million for this year is as much as I was prepared to go.
But I just need one more commitment from the minister, if possible, in that there's been a proposal put out by the government to sell certain lands that government owned based on the E&Y report. That included at least one piece of the Northside District Council. People don't want any land sold in Northside, but one piece of that was actually beach land that we really don't want the government to sell. So if I could get a commitment from the minister that none of the government-owned land in Northside will be sold under the E&Y recommendation.
Minister?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to be in a position to say that my commitment goes further than that. I've drafted a paper already which has yet to be finalized, and the advice for myself and my minister is that no further government property should be sold unless there's some overriding interest for it, and there will be circumstances that it will have to be sold, perhaps to be sold to balance the budget. We hope that never come. Maybe it'd have to be sold to buy a better piece of property, but I did not support, and one of the first things I did was to draft a paper to that effect.
Thank you, Minister. All those in favor of an additional $10 million of expenditure being incurred in the 2018 financial year with respect to EA4 land purchases being approved pursuant to Section 12(2) of the Public Management and Finance Law, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no.
Mr.
The ayes
Chairman,
have it.
since I was reminded earlier that this is a house of politics, I'm going to ask for division.
Recording Secretary, can you take the division, please? Thank you.
Okay, and I don't need to stand? You need to stand. Honorable Alden McLaughlin, absent. Honorable Moses Ike Colonel.
Aye.
Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly.
Aye.
Honorable Dwayne Seymour.
Aye.
Honorable Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honorable Tara Rivers. Is absent. Honorable Bernie Bush. Captain Eugene Ebanks.
Aye.
Miss Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. David White.
Aye.
Mr. Austin Harris. Absent. Honorable Ezra Miller. Mr. Alva Saku.
Aye.
Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Absent. Mr. Anthony Eden.
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Saunders.
Abstain.
Mr. Arden McLean. Absent. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10. The division is 10 ayes, 1 abstention, 5 absentees.
Thank you. We now move on to the next item on our agenda. These are transfer payments for the Ministry of Human Resources. Going to take a kind of a minute, just hold here for, make sure that the minister is seated. We're now moving on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is TP 41 transfer payments, a reduction of $90,000 in respect of poor relief payments. Ask the minister, the honourable Premier, if you have any comments you'd like to make with regard to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before we get into the detail, I just want to say very quickly that this is, overall, this is a proposal to appropriate roughly $2 million more with respect to this this aspect of the Ministry of Community Affairs. Members will see that it is fairly wide-ranging and that there are actually some proposed reductions and some cost savings that have been identified. But the principal areas where increases are required are with respect to poor relief vouchers and the rental assistance. Trying to find the actual, rental accommodation for persons in need. Those are the 2 principal areas where increases are being sought. Mr. Chairman, we have a situation in the country, and this is not just on this occasion, which is a matter of considerable concern, and I think deserving of more analysis, because despite the fact that the economic, and there's no question about that, the economic situation in the country continues to improve and improve significantly, all of the key indicators are telling us, including employment levels, are telling us that the situation economically is continuing to improve. Government revenues indicate that. The number of visitors overall indicate that. you talk to business people, you talk to contractors, the economic situation is vastly improved from 3 or 4 years ago. But yet, the numbers of applications for assistance to the department continue to increase year on year. We believe that there are a number of factors at work, but there is still, or at play, I should say, but there is clearly cause for concern. The remarks which I made in my response to the motion by the member from Georgetown Central about increasing the amount available from pensions to be able to be used for repayment of or paying off of mortgages or purchase of land, I think can be adopted here. The reality is that the population, the Caymanian population, those who are aging out of the workforce, are, we believe, creating a significant demand on the service for assistance as they lose their regular income, and the pensions which they had, for those that have it, are grossly inadequate to assist. There are still some instances, although they are falling, at least if you believe the statistics of unemployment, there is still, we believe, some significant underemployment. And although we don't have the numbers, there is assistance being sought with respect to helping with the consequences of foreclosures. So all of these things are putting additional pressures on the rental aspect of it in particular. We also believe that because more money has been available over the course of the last couple of years, as government's financial position has improved, the ability of NAU to assist more people, that this too has encouraged more people who otherwise would have said, it don't make any sense for me to go, they're not gonna help me. So more people are entering the system. And the fact that we have also decided to increase the amount that is available from the 550 to the 650 this year and the 750 next year has also, we are certain, resulted in more people being being desirous of entering the system. So the result is that at this point, if we don't vote some significantly in increased numbers, which we have here, we reckon by the end of August, we would have exhausted the funding that had been appropriated last year, unless we were to cut back significantly in the number of applications that we actually approved. So I have, Mr. Chairman, with me, the Chief Officer in the Ministry, Ms. Teresa Echenike, and the Deputy CFO, as well as the head of the NAU. So we should be able to respond to any questions and queries which members have.
Thank you, Premier. Are there any questions with regard to TP 41, poor relief payments, a reduction of $90,000? Member for Buddentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I went through this list already, and I realized, as the Premier said, it's just a matter of shifting some money around and making what available to what needs to be available. I am aware of the work that this area does, and I must say it does very good work for some of the people I've dealt with. I can see they've been very professional and they've been very caring to deal with. I must give credit where credit is due. The only question I have in order that, Mr. Chairman, is do we have sufficient staff in the department in terms of to assist with processing? Because it is still a small amount of people doing a lot of work. And I just want to know if any of the spend there will at least address any of those staff issues, or if we have the complement of staff that we need. But outside of that, I have no problem with this overall expenditure.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, sir, I would ask the Chief Officer to respond to the staffing question.
Go ahead. May I ask you, Chief Officer, to state your name and your position?
Teresa Echenike, Chief Officer with the Ministry of Community Affairs. Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, NAU has a staff complement of 32 persons. The budgeted amount is 33. We are down by only one staff member in that unit at this point, and the recruitment process for that is ongoing as we speak.
Members of the committee, I think it would be...
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a suggestion, TP 41, 43, 47, 48, 75, and 63 are all interrelated, so maybe we could put them all on the floor.
That's exactly where I was going to, with what I was going to ask members. I think it'd be far more efficient for us if we could just consider this as a group and deal with it, because we are moving funds around, but the overall increase is 1.95 million, I think, in additional spending. So if members are happy for us to do that, then we'll take all the questions and then we'll put all of these to the vote in one vote. Okay? Thank you all very much. Member for Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In looking at this morning's note from the Minister of Health, indicated there are over 500 indigents that we serve. When I look at TP 41, how is it distinguished between the elderly and disabled and then the indigents on the TP 43? The funding went down for TP 41, but went up on the other one. Mr. Minister, is there a way that, are some of these, is this a duplication of people, elderly and disabled, as opposed to indigents, is what I'm driving at? 41 went down by 90,000, and it is categorized as elderly and disabled, yet 43 is up as indigent persons, and as we were told earlier on from the Minister of Health, that there are 500 and something, over 500 indigents increased. And while you're looking like that, I'd like to echo the sentiments of my colleague from Bordentown West and the leadership of the NAU. Excellent job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I respond to the question, just want to thank the member for Savannah and the member for Bordentown West, both for the compliments. As all of us in this place know, and those who actually work in the system know, you often, more often than not, it is criticism that you get. So we really welcome. Mr. Chairman, would you deal with the member from East End, please?
I think he got the message, sir.
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question from the member from Savannah, TP 41 deals with persons on permanent financial assistance. That is including the elderly and the indigent, who and the disabled, who have been assessed as being in need of permanent financial assistance. So that's what used to be the 550 to 650 that they're getting now, whereas the poor relief voucher is short term, where people are perhaps going through a rough patch and need some assistance in the short term, but haven't been assessed as being in need of permanent financial assistance.
Mr. Chairman.
Member from Savannah, you finished with your question, sir? Yeah, okay. The member from East End?
Mr. Chairman, you're taking all of them in
Yeah, we're taking them and debating, discussing them as a group because they're all interrelated.
same set guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if the Premier can tie all these in for me, because when I got this morning, I was a little confused because I know. Don't worry, I'll take it easy with you. Mr. Chairman, there are some reductions in ex gratia payments to seamen and to ex-servicemen. I don't know how it relates. Is it less people now because we did increase theirs by, but we did increase it by 100, I believe? So, okay. But so that means then that what I said a year ago is coming to fruition, in that seamen should be reducing now because except for the young widows and me, I'm looking forward to receiving that for having served 10 years. And then there's an increase in the needs assessment support, in that what has caused that? An increase in the cost of living or the cost of the service? That is the increase in service. 75. I think we're doing them all. Yeah. TP 75, bottom of 5, page 5. What kind of cost of service over budget is that? Increase in cost? Is it cost of living, the cost of service from external what? Because the utilities haven't gone up that much, I guess. I just want an explanation. It's not
right
that
So, Mr. Chairman, the TP 75 is a function of, the increase is a function of all of the things the members spoke about. The cost of utilities has gone up, as well as the number of people who are asking for assistance with these particular, from this particular vote has also increased.
Okay, and just back to that, Mr. Chairman, back to that seaman appropriation thing. Was the Premier is saying that we have less people on there now?
No, Mr. Chairman. I'm not saying there are less people on. I'm saying there are less than we budgeted for.
Okay.
Right.
Which would
We budgeted
make
for,
me ask the same question then. Yeah. Don't we have a waiting list any longer?
Right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the ex-servicemen, there are no pending applications for them, as you wouldn't expect that to be the case. with as you wouldn't expect. So with the seamen, there are somewhere between 25 and 30 pending applications, mostly from widows. But the department is waiting on them to submit because they're being assessed information. So we're not in the situation where we have been for many, many years, where the budget itself kept people's applications from being processed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if that is the case, can we say if, what was it? What did you call it? Reassessment or was that it? Or reevaluation of the applications that they had to bring in all their new information and the likes. Has that resulted in some of the reduction of the, i.e. people being taken off?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that indulgence. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, there are two separate but related issues or instances here. One is the issue of permanent financial assistance, where people are reassessed to see if their conditions are still the same or whether they still qualify for that. And then there's the situation with the ex-servicemen and the seamen who are reassessed every 2 years to see whether or not they still qualify. In some instances, because if you leave the island for a particular length of time, you don't qualify for the assistance anymore. And also, when you die, you don't qualify anymore. No, but in instances in the past, we found persons still on the list when they've been deceased for long periods of time. And there's another matter I wish to edify the member from East End about. His application is likely to be unsuccessful because he will be earning too much to qualify for the financial assistance. Even when he is retired, his pension will be too much.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the Premier for reminding me that I will probably be unsuccessful. I am sure his generosity and his compassion towards his fellow Caymanian will keep me in good stead in years to come. That was on a lighter note, but it's interesting, and I'm happy to hear that at least seamen are not going to be complaining too much now about and there aren't many of us left, and those of us who are left are probably being able to take care of ourselves and will not qualify, which is, I didn't intend qualifying anyway. But hopefully those who are awaiting the allocation, the provision, that it will be done in a timely manner. I will double check with some people that I know who are in my constituents and see what the status is from their perspective as to whether they need to provide other information or otherwise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with provisions us to do for people, but certainly, and I too want to thank Tamara Holston and all her staff. Have always been responded to in a timely manner, and in 99% of the times I've gotten the results that I expected. So I hope that continues, because I've been here long enough to know that when we only had a couple of people there, especially when we transferred it, that it was touch and go, and people were complaining from one end of this country to the next about those provisions. And you guys still get people complaining, but by and large, that staff does a good job, and I would like to thank them for their responses to my constituents of East End.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure the comments are very much appreciated and acknowledged. Are there other questions? Oh,
I have one or two questions.
member for Northside.
On TP 43, I just have some concerns on which has always been around for a long time, is the potential for abuse. Are we doing anything to put up, as I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong, is that most of these poor relief vouchers, in particular those that are related to food, is done on a kind of a debit card system without a picture ID. Is there any possibility of putting a picture ID on it? Because I know of a couple of cases where it has been reported to me that what the drug people are doing is they are using the card, they're giving the card to their suppliers to take to the supermarket to get whatever groceries they need to pay for the drugs that they get. That is so unfortunate that is happening, because many of the people who actually need this help then are not getting it. And the other side of it is that sometimes there's also my understanding that in some cases the money is paid to family members on behalf of elderly persons. And there are instances that I am aware where the elderly person, how should I put this now, is not necessarily receiving the benefit that the government believes that they should be getting, because the family member may be using the funds for other matters. And I don't have any magic wand solutions, but I just want to make us all aware of it so that it can be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask Ms. Tamara Huddleston to respond to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We do have a food card, and it's linked to more than one individual in many cases because it's for the household. It's not a picture ID on the card, but it's actually linked to person's identification, such as their license, passport, etc. So one card can be used by multiple persons for many reasons. In many cases of the elderly, they're not able to get out themselves, so then they'll have maybe their children or their grandchildren on the card. And that's linked behind the scenes. So when the cashier pulls it pulls up the card numbers that the identifications it's registered with, and then they have to have one of those presents for them to see. The possibility of pictures on cards could be used. Some of our clients have a little sensitive about having their picture and anything linked to the type of services we're giving. So we have to take that into consideration. But where we do get abuse or fraud reported, we do investigate, and then we look at other measures to put in place to see if we can, alleviate that from happening.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'd add to that is that if members are aware of any instances where there are abuses of this, then if they report it to the unit or department, the necessary steps would be taken to address it. So,
There are no further questions. I will then pose the question. All those in favor of a decrease of $90,000 in TP 41 poor relief payments? an increase of $1,350,000 to TP in additional spending for TP 43 poor relief vouchers, a decrease of $325,000 in TP 47 ex gratia payment benefits to seamen, a decrease in expenditure of $90,000 in TP 48 benefit payments to ex-servicemen, an increase of $70,000 in expenditure for TP 75 needs assessment support, an increase of $140,000 increase in expenditure of $140,000 in NGS 63 school lunch and uniform programs, an increase of increase in expenditure of $1,300,000 in NGS 68 rental accommodation for persons in need, an increase in expenditure of $60,000 in NGS 70, burial assistance for indigents, and a decrease in expenditure of $495,000 in HCA 38, supervision and support of older persons. Being approved pursuant to Section 12(2) of the Public Management and Finance Law, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Members of the committee, what remains for us now is to entertain to deal with the resolution to disperse monies from the Environmental Protection Fund to buy lands that we discussed and approved previously. Honorable Minister for Environment, I would invite you at this time, if you would please read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whereas the Environmental Protection Fund was created on the 10th of December 1997 by Government Motion 1497 for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. And whereas it is required that disbursements from the fund may only be made in accordance with resolutions made by the Finance Committee and under the authority of the Minister for Finance for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. And whereas at 31st of May 2018, the balance in the fund was $58.5 million, Finance Committee has already approved disbursements from the fund to occur during the 2018 and 2019 financial years of $6,100,000 and $9,550,000 respectively. And whereas the government is seeking approval in the 2018 financial year for the additional amount shown by the overleaf schedule, totaling $10 million, that represents additional expenditure to be incurred with respect to protecting and preserving the environment of the islands, being met by disbursements from the fund. Be it now therefore resolved that 1, the expenditure shown by the overleaf schedule totaling $10 million that is expected to be incurred in the 2018 financial year be recognized as being in the interests of protecting and preserving the environment of the islands, and 2, that the Minister for Finance be authorized to disperse up to $10 million from the Environmental Protection Fund to defray expenditures to be incurred with respect to the matters on the overleaf schedule. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister.
Not to
Member
be,
for...
Yeah, not to be pedantic, but I think the numbers as read by the minister were incorrect. It is not 6,100,000, it's 6,100,000, and it's not 9,550,000, it's 9,550,000. So I want to correct that just for the record.
And I do so correct. Finance Committee has already approved disbursements from the fund to occur during the 2018 and 2019 financial years of $6,100,000 and $9,550,000 respectively.
Thank you, Minister. Does any other member wish to speak to the motion? To the resolution, I should say. Member for East End, do you?
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have been on this campaign for a long time. And I am again asking the now minister if he could possibly look into the possibility of us taking funds, and I've discussed this with the Premier on a number of occasions, and previous ministers, $2-3 million a year. I think we do 6, 8, maybe. $2-3 million a year for the enforcement of the marine environment. I keep telling you, I'm no conservationist. You ain't gonna see me hugging up on a tree. But I understand extinction is forever. And somehow we need to do that. The fact that we put $6 million in there and we can brag about that, we can put 4 in it. And $2-3 million a year to just buy boats, buy gasoline, whatever the case may be, vehicles, pay overtime, pay staff, increase the number of staff that are enforcing the marine environment. That is the tourism lifeblood. And we only have 2 pillars, and if it's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever. And Mr. Chairman, everybody knows that I am not satisfied with the provisions currently in place to protect the environment. When I was minister, I even built a place in the police station in Gun Bay for them to have it. I didn't get the money to do the docking facilities for their boats, but a room was there for the environmental officers. We need to do it, even if it regardless of who it hampers in their skullduggery behavior, poaching and what have you. We need to stop it. We need to make it. That's why we put minimum amount of things we can take. And you can't depend on the morality of people that did not do it. We need to enforce it. And I've been saying this for 18 years, that we need to enforce it. Somehow we need to do it. And that's what the Environmental Fund, I believe, was developed for. On that basis, that we use it to protect it. Not only to buy lands and beach land or in land properties. It's about that environment too. The first place our tourists flock to is the water. And here we are, we do nothing about it. No, not. Let me say, we don't do sufficient in my view. Driving along the road is not good enough. We must patrol this thing on a daily basis. And you know, Mr. Chairman, that is my contribution to this. I'm begging this minister, imploring that he comes back down here and we make a new resolution to do $2 million per year, whatever it is. It has to be assessed, of course, on how much would be required to have a robust And we couldn't know how much until we at least try something. Maybe in 5 years' time, we have to change it to another $500,000 to increase it. But we need to do something. There are too many stories of the poaching and the destruction of our natural resources, which we rely on for the second pillar of our society, our economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, thank the member for
Minister, go ahead.
for that question. And I, like him, has not professed to be a conservationist, but not only because I'm the minister responsible for the environment, but we all need to act responsibly in protecting the environment. And but I agree, we need to have proper enforcement and budgeted.
Honorable Premier.
No, Mr. Chair, I wasn't in here for most of the discussion on the land purchase. I just wanted to, but I do know what transpired and generally what was said. But I just want to register this, is that more and more as I move around this country and as I see what is happening in terms of development, and I see the prices of property, and I look in the faces of the young people in particular in this country, and I remember what this place was like when I was growing up and when I was even a young man. Like most of the older members in here, I can remember when there wasn't much beside cocoa plum bush and mangroves along the West Bay Road, besides the Beach Club Hotel and Old Galleon Beach, and later the Holiday Inn, because I can remember when that was being built. I getting old for true. But particularly up on the eastern end of the island, which I knew best, all the land, most of the land east of Pease Bay, up to Roger and down to Rum Point, there was just so much opportunity. Anyone who wanted to go fishing, go for a picnic. We didn't fool with camping much when I was growing up, but but my point was, even though the land was, most of it was privately owned, there was no issue about somebody going and staking out a little place there for leisure, whether it was fishing or a picnic or whatever. Those days are already behind us. And the population of these islands was very small. 1970, the population was still only 10,000 people. When I graduated from high school in 78, it was still only 16,000 people. We know it's around 64,000 now, not counting the 2.5 million tourists a year. So if we don't, as members in this House, take the necessary steps to obtain and to preserve land, particularly land which gives access to the sea, which Caymanians have from the day we were settled, identified with, we, I think, would be correctly judged in dereliction of duty, of our duty to our people and to subsequent generations in particular, and would no doubt be condemned by our children and grandchildren for not having had the vision and foresight and determination to ensure that regardless of what size the population gets to, that people, the ordinary, the average person, whether they are Caymanian or a visitor, still has adequate opportunity to access the beach. The islands around us who have failed to do that, the social consequences have been grave. And I know that I'm saying this not just to have my voice heard, but because I know that there are detractors out there who say that we shouldn't use this money from the Environmental Protection Fund for these purposes. I don't think there is a better purpose for which we can use it than in this way. And so my view is we do our very best to identify suitable properties. We use the money that we have as best we can to do so, to purchase these. And if next year there are, because the fund is being replenished on a yearly basis, if next year collectively or individually as representatives we identify some other suitable place, then we look to see what more we can do in that regard. And this is I view as a national imperative, and I am delighted it has the support, the unanimous support of all members of this House and of this committee to proceed in this way, even though some of us may dicker a bit over which property it should be. I don't think there's any doubt that collectively we believe that this is the right approach, right across all three islands. And history will judge us well for having done so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Premier. There are no further discussion. Then I will now put the question as to whether honourable members support the following resolution. Be it now therefore resolved that 1. The expenditure shown by the overleaf schedule totaling $10 million that is expected to be incurred in the 2018 financial year be recognized as being in the best interest of protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. And 2, the Minister for Finance be authorized to disburse up to $10 million from the Environmental Protection Fund to defray expenditures to be incurred with respect to the matters on the overleaf schedule. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. Therefore, the resolution is approved by the committee. Members, that does conclude the business of this Finance Committee, but I'm just crave your indulgence. Let me consult with the Chief Officer, my Chief Officer, to understand, because I know we have to have a further meeting to consider the report and the minutes of the committee. What has been suggested also is that we could allow the staff here to get the report prepared this evening, for her to review it with the financial secretary and iron out any changes or anything that need to be made. And then it be circulated to members electronically overnight. We can all respond and say yay, nay, whatever. And then when we get back together in September, that we physically sign it.
Mr. Chairman, if members are amenable, let's do as much as we can. Let's hopefully get the report agreed by round robin or some other means. Let's don't leave that till September. So, right.
Okay,
Exactly.
I'm at your disposal too. So what I would ask, if members just hang around or come back by, say, let's give them an hour and a half to get it prepared. Yeah.
Round robin.
You want to do it by round robin? Okay,
Yeah, that's
I
clear.
misunderstand.
That's clear.
All right, I'm happy to accept that as well, and we do it by round robin. Absolutely. That's the proposal. So if everyone is in agreement, then I will bring this this finance committee to a close, and well, all that remains really is to wish you all a very happy summer. Enjoy the time, and the committee is adjourned. Thank you all very much.